All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to go on a journey, a microscopic safari, really, to explore the incredible, bustling city that exists inside every living thing on this planet, the cell. But you know what? To understand the complexities inside of us, we first have to go somewhere, well, somewhere pretty strange, deep inside the Earth. So before we get to the cells that make up you, picture this. You're deep in a dark cave. The air kind of smells like sulfur, like rotten eggs, and hanging down from the ceiling are these long, slimy, dripping things. What in the world do you call them? Yep, snototites. You heard that right. Caver Jim Pisarovich gave them that name. And let's be honest, it's perfect. But these totally bizarre formations are so much more than just a weird thing to find in a cave. They're actually a window into the very beginning of life itself. So what are these cenotites really? Well, they're not just some mineral deposit. Nope, they are living, breathing communities. They're a slimy, gooey bridge connecting us right back to our planet's most ancient past. The bacteria that make up these things are unbelievably tough. Scientists call them extremophiles, which basically means lovers of extreme conditions. And they're not kidding. These guys don't just put up with toxic gas and almost zero oxygen, they thrive in it. What's really cool is that their cells are super simple, without a main control center or nucleus. And that gives us an amazing glimpse into what life probably looked like 3.5 billion years ago when the very first bacteria showed up on Earth. Okay, so from that ancient, simple goo all the way to, well, there's one fundamental rule that applies to everything. All life, no matter how wild and different it seems, is built from the exact same essential blocks. This is like the cornerstone of all biology. It doesn't matter if it's a single-celled bacterium in a snotite, a giant sequoia tree, or you listening to this right now. Everything is made of cells. They're the microscopic bricks that build the entire living world. But here's the thing about these bricks. They're incredibly tiny. So to see them, we need some serious hardware. A good light microscope, the kind you might find in a science lab, can magnify something up to 1,500 times its actual size. And with that power, this invisible world just pops into view. So let's grab our microscope and start the tour. I want you to stop thinking of a cell as just a blob of jelly. Instead, think of it as a complex, functioning city. And we're going to start with the kind of cell that makes up you and me. First stop on any city tour has to be the border, right? You gotta have something to control what comes in and what goes out. For our cell city, that's the cell membrane. Now, this membrane is like a really, really smart security gate. It's partially permeable, which is just a fancy way of saying it's picky. It knows exactly what to let in, the good stuff like nutrients and water, and it knows what to kick out like waste products. It keeps everything inside the city perfectly balanced. Okay, we're past security, let's head deeper into the city, to the most important building in the entire place, the command center, the city hall. In the world of the cell, that's the nucleus. So this is where the city's master blueprints are kept, your DNA. It's all neatly packed up into these structures we call chromosomes. Every single order for the entire cell comes from right here. What to build, when to grow, how to function. The nucleus is the absolute brain of the operation. But a city can have the best plans in the world, and without energy, nothing's going to get done. The city needs power plants working 24/7 to keep the lights on. And that's where the mitochondria come in. You've probably heard them called the powerhouses of the cell, and that's exactly what they are. They take in food molecules and use the oxygen you breathe to burn that food for energy. It's a process called aerobic respiration. And it's why cells that do a ton of work, like your muscle cells, are absolutely jam-packed with thousands of these little power plants. Okay, so we've had a good look around the animal cell city. Now let's go check out the neighbors over in the plant kingdom. They've built their cities with a lot of the same parts, but they've also added a few very powerful upgrades. So, plant cells have pretty much all the same machinery we just saw, but they come with 3 huge additions that completely change the game. Let's take a look at what makes them so unique. The first big upgrade is on the outside. An animal cell is kind of soft and flexible, right? It just has that membrane. A plant cell, though, it builds a massive, rigid wall all the way around its city. This cell wall is made from a really tough material called cellulose. It provides amazing structural support. It's the reason a flower can stand up straight. It also acts like a pressure vessel, preventing the cell from taking in too much water and bursting like a balloon. It's basically an external skeleton for every single cell. And now for the feature that, honestly, powers almost all life on our planet. Plant cells have their own specialized power plants, but they run on a totally different kind of fuel. These are chloroplasts, the cell's own personal solar power stations. They're filled with a green pigment called chlorophyll, which does way more than just make plants look green. It acts like a solar panel, absorbing energy from sunlight. It then uses that energy to power a process called photosynthesis, which turns carbon dioxide and water into food. And as a little byproduct, it releases the oxygen we all need to breathe. No big deal. So we've seen the individual bricks, right? The animal cell, the plant cell. But how do you get from these tiny individual cities to massive complex structures, like a forest or a human being? Well, life is all about organization. It's a beautiful hierarchy. You start with cells, then cells with the same job band together to form tissues, like muscle tissue, where all the cells are designed to contract. Then different tissues come together to form an organ, like the stomach. It's got muscle tissue for churning and other tissues for producing enzymes. Those organs then link up into organ systems, like the entire digestive system. And finally, all those systems work together to create a complete, functioning organism. When you step back and think about it, it's just incredible. From the simplest bacterium in a cave to the trillions of cells that are all cooperating to make you right now, our whole world is built by these tiny biological cities. We are only just beginning to truly understand their blueprints. So the real question is, what will we build with them next?